Okay, today's Ask Minister Marvin Means This comes from Stacy, and she asked, "What are some things to avoid doing in a marriage? What are some things to avoid doing in a marriage?" Okay. Well, I've got about 10 things that I've come up with, and the 10 I bring up, now I know I'm missing, I probably am missing some points, but this is not etched in stone, but rather to help answer this question, and also whatever else you can think of, it'll be most beneficial, most helpful also. And this is not in any order, so to speak. But number one, don't take your partner for granted. Don't take your spouse for granted. In Ephesians 5:25, it says, "Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her." This verse emphasizes the importance of selfishness and sacrifice in a marriage. And similarly, in Proverbs 31:28 and 29, it says, "Her children arise and call her blessed," and this part is speaking on the woman, "and her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all." This verse highlights the importance of appreciation and admiration in a marriage. But mostly also, like I said, don't take each other for granted. Because when we take each other for granted, then we're not being serious enough with each other. And we look at the other person as, "Oh, you'll always be there," which, no, that's cool, that's fine. But again, we are to take each other more serious and not take each other for granted, because when we take each other for granted, then we tend to get lazy, we tend to get lax and too comfortable, so to speak. Because there's always someone who can be in the shadows, in the bushes, ready to jump on an opportunity that you may not see as a gem anymore because you've gotten too relaxed and comfortable, but somebody else will see as that person being a prize and will jump all over what you're beginning to get lax in. Okay, number two, don't mind reading. Please don't mind reading. In other words, never assume, because assumptions can, make what out of you and me. See, assuming is a 50-50 proposition. Whereas you can get it right or you can get it wrong in doing an assumption. Now, if you get an assumption right, it's all gravy, but if you get an assumption wrong, then all hell will break loose. Because now you made an assumption about your spouse. It was wrong. Now that spouse could very much take that as, "Oh, you got it out for them, you made lies about them, and then you wanted to run with it." So that can be huge complications in your marriage. So please, do not start assuming. Number three, blame. Placing blame. I look at that as when we place blame without taking accountability. We start pointing fingers, especially at the spouse, when things are starting to go bad. It's supposed to be an equal partnership. And you can't be pointing fingers while, say, the ship is starting to sink. You got to come together to bail that water out so that ship doesn't sink. And you know, I got an example of that with Adam and Eve, when God pointed out their wrong. Adam started pointing a finger at his wife, saying, "Oh, it was you're the one that gave me this woman here to be my wife." You know, more or less, he basically was trying to say it was God's fault. But you know, he was wrong for that. Number 4, don't play a psychologist. Don't play a shrink in your situation. Whereas you start to pile on faults onto your spouse, and you assume, again, here's that word assume, you assume your spouse is acting a certain way in such a situation where you dare to give a diagnosis that you're not qualified to give. So don't assume, again, like I said, the word assumption comes up again, so don't assume, because again, that can backfire on you. So don't play a shrink. Number 5, and this mainly is toward females, and some men do this also, but don't play games in saying yes when you mean no, or vice versa. Please don't do that. Especially for us men, we're overall pretty much just straight shooters, straightforward. You come off much better when you don't play those games with us. You know, saying yes when you mean no, or vice versa. Please don't do that, because all that does is just throw a monkey wrench in the communications between a husband and a wife. Please don't do that. And it's even worse when a man does it. So do not do that. Don't do that. Number 6, use silence as a weapon. When something is going on and it needs to be talked out, silence. Now, I know some people may want to, go the silent route because you're trying not to get angry and all flustered and bothered up and whatnot. Okay, fine. But in the long run, when you continue to do that, again, that can be detrimental in a relationship and in a marriage. You're giving someone a silent treatment, and it goes on to last for days and even a week or even 2 weeks. That's way too much. Because what that person is going to do, whether it be the female or the male, the husband or the wife, when you do that, all you're doing, remember I said there's people out there, hiding in bushes and whatnot, waiting to pounce on a situation that they see that to them looks good to them, and they want to get in on that action, whether it be the husband or the wife. So now what you're doing is opening up a door for that husband or wife whoever's not being talked to. Now they want to express themselves, but they don't have you being that spouse to express to. So now they're going to that person, okay, who sees an opening, so they're giving a waiting ear. Again, that can be detrimental. That can be the downfall of your relationship and of your marriage. So please do not drag that on. Don't drag that on. Okay, number 7. Don't threaten. Don't make threatening statements. Don't make threatening comments, especially not physical. Please don't do that. Don't do that. Because sometimes that spouse may want to call your bluff. And again, I harp on the fact that there are people out there looking and waiting because they see what you got better than what they got, even though what you're going through right now, you may not see that. All they see what's going on is on the outside. And for what they see, you put up a pretty good show, a pretty good front. So they don't see what's going on behind closed doors. All they see is what they see, and what they see looks good to them. And they may want a piece of what you got going on. They may want a piece of you or your spouse. Let's see. Next one, don't overly criticize. Don't be so critical of your spouse all the time. Whereas that criticism is beating them down on a daily basis. Please don't do that. Because you make them feel lowered, you make them cower down, and then you make them, again, reach out to somebody else. Somebody else will always be there to give a soothing ear. Nice words, encouraging words. That person will need encouragement. And especially in a situation where majority of couples, they're going out working, going out into the workforce, having a crappy day at work, come home, they don't want to hear all that. They don't want to hear the criticism because they probably just had the criticism at work. So they don't want to hear the criticism. So when you're criticizing them, especially as soon as they come home, when you're giving that criticism, whether it be the male or the female, they don't want to hear that criticism. So what they're going to do is they're going to want to hear some positivity poured into them instead of the criticism, because the criticism pulls out from them. It's okay every now and then, but on an everyday basis, countless times, that wears on a person. They don't want to hear that all the time. They want to be poured into, not pulled out of. And there's always somebody, because the devil sees us all, so he will send people your way or that spouse's way to pour into you to get you sidetracked and to ruin your marriage. 9, don't be unfaithful. All this can lead up to being unfaithful. Everything I said can lead up to being unfaithful. And if you're not putting these things in check beforehand, it can lead up to unfaithfulness. And lastly, number 10, don't leave Jesus out. See, when all this is going on, always put Jesus at the forefront to suppress that first thing I said, to suppress that second thing, the third thing, the fourth thing. In other words, when you continue to put Jesus to the forefront, when you continue to have Jesus by your side, when you continue to be led by Jesus, to be taught by the Holy Spirit to keep you in check, then it doesn't get to those levels of frustration, of anger and resentment, and then you want to cheat and then get a divorce and leave your spouse. When you got things in check, when you put Jesus first, when you console yourself with Jesus, when you console yourself with the Word, then hopefully you've left enough of the world out of your marriage that you don't get to the point of cheating, or you don't get to the point of separation, or you don't get to the point of divorce. So I hope I've answered that question. Like I said, I know there are other examples, other instances, but the main thing is putting Jesus first, putting him first and foremost in your marriage. Enough said.